Yeah, well, like a lot of stories these days, this one has an Elon Musk tie-in. What is that, Robby?
So Elon Musk voted in this election. He lives in this district, and he said that he voted for Flores, the Republican, for the first time in his life ever voting for a Republican. He also said on Twitter that he was asked if he'd be voting for Republican in 2024. He, cryptically said TBD, and then he was asked who he liked, and he said DeSantis.
Yeah.
So,
is this the beginning of the coveted Elon Musk bump? Is he controlling the airwaves through Twitter and also our political futures?
I mean, he's just he's the main character that like Republican or conservative news consumers need now that Trump is kind of exiting the stage as the guy. It's his turn in the spotlight, and he is both becoming associated with the conservative tribe, and also I think deliberately catering it to a great extent.
What do you think that's about? What's the chicken and the egg of that here? Do you think, because I've observed this phenomenon, I've observed it in my personal life, that if you say anything that is at all validating to a conservative worldview, let's say they embrace you, they pull you in, and we saw this with Joe Rogan.
Absolutely.
Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, and Lib said, "Oh, I hate you, you're a right winger."
Right.
But the conservatives, he says anything that's at all, whether it's the anti-vax stuff or whatever, that's even remotely aligned with the majority view on the right, and they embrace him and bring him in, and he goes further and further in that direction. Is that what's happened with Elon Musk, or do you think he has real ideological commitments here?
I think it is frustratingly and increasingly hard to be not wholly part of one tribe or the other now. We're all kind of pretty accurately sorted. The era of, the conservative Dem who votes for Republicans, maybe a Republican president, but mostly votes for Democrats locally, or the opposite, a Republican, but darn it, John Kennedy is handsome on TV, so I'm voting for him. Like, that's over. That doesn't happen. Yeah. You just vote for your person. It's hard to be someone. I speak with some experience as someone with libertarian views that sometimes fit into what liberals think and sometimes fit into what conservatives think. The overriding temptation is just to fully commit to one side or the other and reap the rewards of being part of a team and a tribe and having one media environment play defense for you. And Musk is a very important and wealthy and influential person, and the value of wholly committing to one side or the other is then you do have people coming to your defense. Right now, the entire conservative media establishment wants to defend and protect Elon Musk. And a lot of other business figures go the other way. They find they don't like the Republican Party, or they don't like some of its values, so they have to be part of the other side. And then you get more committed to whatever the Democrats are good and Trump is evil and that kind of thing.
What do you think this means for third-party efforts like Andrew Yang's Forward Party? Is there an appetite for that right now?
Certainly there's an appetite for it. I absolutely think if you just talk to people, the appetite for third parties is huge, but the structural problems for third parties just cannot be overcome. I wish they could be overcome. We need ranked choice voting, we need proportional kind of electoral and other kinds of things, but that would involve, the two parties who control our government would have to concede to structural changes that will weaken their death grip.
Yeah, there was a time when Andrew Yang used to tweet and get the kind of enthusiasm, not in the same scale, but that Elon Musk gets. Mm-hmm. There was a similar vibe there. I am a tech guy, a kind of finance guy who can speak truth to power, who's outside of the system, who, is surprising in their takes and an innovator, and people really had an appetite for it. I watch his tweets these days and the level of engagement they get. And when he talks about the Forward Party, and I know that Twitter is not a real barometer of the real world, but at least in this space, it feels like something has shifted. And the generalized talk about like we got to be together, and I'm over divisiveness, and we have to have proactive solutions. That rhetoric that landed for folks in the primary context, in the Democratic primary context, doesn't seem to be toothy enough for the kind of battles that are happening now on Twitter. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yang did do a very impressive job of being someone who no one knew who he was. talking about a lot of very specific issues, just appeared.
Put UBI on the map.
Really did. It really contributed to the conversation. It's one thing for someone who's politically unknown but is generally well known, like a celebrity or like Bloomberg coming in, or even Trump, right? And making some kind of impression because they have this basic recognition. And Yang didn't have that at all.
No, and he still beat Kamala in California.
Right.
Or would have.
So, but look. People, that moment might just have passed, and now we need to. The public's just interest in certain people wanes, and maybe it needs to be somebody else. But in any case, the structural issues are just so hard. This is what I talk to people about when I'm a third-party voter. I wish third parties would do better, but it's just because it's really a uniquely American problem because of the structure just does not allow it to happen. And I wish it was different. I think other countries, a lot of European countries that seem to have somewhat healthier political situations or political conversations have many parties, have not just two, but many parties. And then when one party goes insane, the rest gang up on them. And you have these kind of coalitions that are that seem healthier.
Well, I talk about this a lot with people who listen to my show and my call-in show. There's a lot of frustration on the left with electoralism, generally speaking. And sometimes I do candidate interviews, and most folks are over it because they don't see any hope of progressive populism getting any breathing room within the Democratic Party. They see Democrats turning on progressives harder than they will turn against Republicans or the so-called moderates like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, and they don't want to see leftists running within the Democratic Party. Now, they do sometimes say, I would love a candidate, and this was a discussion around Bernie 2020, I would love a candidate to run within the Democratic Party, take advantage of the system and avoid some of those structural barriers, and then do a dirty break once they're elected. A lot of people wanted Bernie Sanders to run third party at the end of the Democratic primary. I don't think that was ever in his DNA. But there are a candidate I interviewed recently, Michaela Wilkes, said that she was open to that. She's running against Steny Hoyer in Maryland's 5th. And my audience was very receptive to that idea. So I'd be curious to see whether there are more candidates that might say, I'm going to run as a Democrat, I'm going to run as a Republican, and then I'm going to break for the forward party if the party does me wrong, if the two-party infrastructure does me wrong.
And it needs to start at the local level, the smaller level. Like you're not going to suddenly have a third-party presidential candidate, do anything remotely impressive, but you could. Elon Musk could run in that district as a forward party candidate. I'm just saying, and he might very well win, and then you have to build something from that. But in the general presidential, no luck there.